Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Witcher, The Lady of the Lake by Andrzej Sapkowski. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. The Witcher, The Lady of the Lake is the final novel in Andrzej Sapkowski's The Witcher Saga, and it brings the complex and richly woven storylines of Geralt of Rivia, Ciri, Yennefer, and the world of the continent to a head. Published in 2008, the book is part of Sapkowski's celebrated series, known for its intricate plotting, morally gray characters, and philosophical undertones about fate, choice, and the burdens of destiny. The Lady of the Lake also sees the culmination of various political, personal, and fantastical threads, merging past, present, and future in a way that reflects the series' deep engagement with historical, mythical, and literary tropes. The novel, while continuing the themes of its predecessors, also introduces a wider, more cosmic view of the world. Sapkowski's trademark mix of epic fantasy and political intrigue culminates in The Lady of the Lake, where Geralt and his companions confront not only external threats, but also their inner struggles with love, fate, and self-identity. The book is pivotal not only as the final installment of a saga, but also as a work that questions the nature of heroism and the true cost of fighting for a better world. The Witcher, The Lady of the Lake opens with Geralt of Rivia, the legendary monster hunter, standing at the crossroads of his fate, carrying the weight of past decisions that have shaped his life. The world around him is one of chaos, political intrigue, and magic, and Geralt, a witcher bound by his code, finds himself caught in the midst of it all. The narrative picks up with a key focus on Ciri, the child of surprise, a girl entwined in prophecy, whose destiny is destined to shape the world in unimaginable ways. Ciri has been missing for a long time, and this absence has shattered Geralt. The Witcher's journey to find her is not just a search for the girl he considers his adopted daughter, but also a search for meaning, for answers, and for redemption in a world where so many lives have been marred by war, betrayal, and endless strife. Ciri, the child raised by Geralt and Yennefer, has always been at the heart of the narrative. Her significance to the fate of the world is immense, and this is something that weighs heavily on her. As the story unfolds, Ciri grapples with the weight of her own destiny. The prophecy surrounding her birth and the path she's set to walk are both a gift and a curse. Her very existence has attracted powerful forces that want to control or destroy her. These forces are not just human but magical in nature, as she is linked to the Elder Blood, a bloodline with the potential to reshape the world. It is clear from the beginning that her choices will not only impact her own future, but the future of everyone around her. Her journey is both physical and emotional. The landscapes of the continent are vast, ranging from the war-torn kingdoms to the more mystical and dangerous places where magic lingers in the air. But it's not just the physical journey that defines her. It's the emotional and spiritual transformation that unfolds as she faces choices that will determine her future. Ciri, once the innocent girl that Geralt protected, must now confront the truth of who she is and what she is destined to become. The weight of prophecy is immense, and as the story progresses, Ciri must wrestle with the forces that wish to control her while trying to assert her own will. She is torn between her loyalty to Geralt and Yennefer, family she's always known, and the call of a destiny that she never asked for. As Geralt searches for Ciri, the narrative weaves through his own past and struggles. He is a man of few words, a solitary figure in many ways, whose life has been defined by bloodshed and loss. Geralt's world is filled with monsters, literal and metaphorical, yet his true enemy is often the society he inhabits. The Witcher's quest for Ciri is a journey of redemption, but it is also one of self-discovery. Geralt's relationship with Ciri is that of a father figure, and this bond has been strained by the girl's disappearance. But as much as Geralt searches for Ciri, he is also searching for answers to questions that have plagued him for years. What is the purpose of his existence? Is he simply a monster hunter? Or is there a higher meaning to his life and the choices he has made? Yennefer, Geralt's lover, is another central figure whose presence lingers over the story. Yennefer's relationship with Geralt is complicated, full of passion, love, and pain. She is a sorceress of great power, but her own internal struggles are just as significant as the external battles she faces. Yennefer is a character driven by desire for power, love, and acceptance. But she is also deeply flawed, and her relationship with Geralt reflects these flaws. Their love is intense, but it is often marred by the very things that make them who they are. Yennefer's search for Ciri is driven not just by the need to protect the girl, but by her own conflicting emotions about motherhood, love, and what it means to be part of a family. As Geralt's search for Ciri unfolds, he finds himself entangled in the web of politics that surrounds the continent. The kingdoms are at war, and the rulers of these lands are not just concerned with their own survival, but with their ability to manipulate forces beyond their control. Magic plays a significant role in these political machinations, as sorcerers, mages, and kings vie for power. The political landscape is a reflection of the larger theme of the novel, the tension between fate and free will. On the one hand, Ciri is a pawn in the larger political game, with everyone seeking to control her. On the other hand, she is a person with the ability to choose her own path, and this tension drives much of the story's emotional depth. The Lady of the Lake, the novel's titular figure, looms over the narrative in ways that are subtle but profound. She is not just a mythic figure or a distant legend. She represents the themes of choice and destiny that permeate the novel. The lake itself, a place of mystery and magic, symbolizes the uncertain future that lies before Ciri and Geralt. The Lady of the Lake is a reflection of the challenges that both characters face, challenges that force them to confront their own roles in the grand scheme of things. Can Geralt protect Ciri from the forces that seek to control her? Can Ciri choose her own destiny, or will she be swept along by the currents of fate? This first part of the story establishes the complex relationships between the key characters and sets the stage for the epic journey that is about to unfold. It is clear from the start that Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer are bound together by more than just blood or love. They are bound by a shared sense of purpose, a shared struggle against the forces that would see them torn apart. As the story unfolds, the reader is left to wonder whether the choices these characters make will lead them to freedom or to their ultimate downfall. In a world as harsh and unforgiving as the one Sapkowski has created, there are no easy answers, and every decision is fraught with consequences. And so, the stage is set for a tale of love, loss, and the search for meaning in a world where the lines between good and evil are never clearly defined. As Geralt's journey continues, the world around him grows more treacherous and enigmatic. His search for Ciri, now marked by both urgency and desperation, takes him into increasingly unfamiliar territories. He is no stranger to danger, but the forces arrayed against him in this new chapter of his life are not merely human. They are supernatural, far more insidious than any monster he's faced before. His path becomes more entwined with the political landscape of the continent, where allegiances shift as quickly as the winds, and the lives of ordinary people are treated as mere pawns in a far grander game. The search for Ciri is not simply a quest for one person, but a search for meaning itself. Geralt has always been a man defined by his code, by the choices that set him apart from others. But now, with Ciri missing, the very foundation of his identity is called into question. He begins to wonder whether his efforts, his entire existence as a witcher, amount to anything at all. Is he, as the world seems to insist, just a tool in a larger conflict, a monster hunter, a sword for hire? Or is there something more to his fate, some greater role for him to play in the unfolding of events that threaten to tear the world apart? Ciri, meanwhile, is not idle in her absence. Her own journey is one of self-discovery, filled with peril, uncertainty, and a profound internal struggle. She is no longer the innocent girl she once was, but someone who must confront the full weight of her powers and the prophecy that binds her to the future of the continent. Her connection to the elder blood, a rare and powerful lineage, makes her a key figure in the ongoing conflicts between the nations, kingdoms, and the forces of magic. Ciri's struggle, however, is not just with external forces. Her greatest challenge lies in reconciling the girl she was with the woman she must become. Her path is a tortured one. Torn between the expectations placed upon her and her desire for autonomy, Ciri is faced with decisions that will shape her future, and not just hers, but the future of the entire world. As the story progresses, we see that her powers are not something she can easily control. The magic within her is vast and dangerous, and every use of it brings with it unforeseen consequences. Her powers draw the attention of those who would use her for their own ends, yet they also alienate her from the very people she loves most: Geralt, Yennefer, and the family she's come to rely on. But even as Ciri grapples with her identity, Geralt is not far behind in his internal struggles. The Witcher's journey becomes one of reflection as much as action. The decisions he has made in his past, decisions about his role in the world, his relationships with the people around him, are now weighing heavily on him. He often questions his role as Ciri's protector. Is he truly helping her? Or is he keeping her from finding her own path? Geralt's protective instincts clash with his recognition that Ciri must be allowed to chart her own course, despite the dangers that await her. The tension between these two impulses, fatherly love and the recognition of her autonomy, becomes one of the central emotional threads of the story. As Geralt pushes forward, he faces new threats that challenge his very existence. The political landscape of the continent is growing ever more volatile. The kingdoms of the north, locked in their endless battles for supremacy, are under the control of rulers who are more concerned with power than with the lives of their people. In the south, the mighty empire of Nilfgaard is sweeping through the land like a tide, bringing with it an agenda that stretches far beyond mere conquest. Nilfgaard's forces are not just militaristic, They are aided by powerful sorcerers, whose manipulations threaten to upset the delicate balance of power across the world. The presence of magic in the story, especially in the context of Ciri's powers, becomes an ever-present undercurrent that shapes the events unfolding around her. Magic is not a tool used for good or evil alone. It is a force that bends to the wills of those who control it. As Geralt faces off against forces, both magical and mundane, he begins to see the true cost of using magic as a weapon. He begins to understand the moral ambiguities surrounding magic, its potential for destruction, its seductive allure, and the toll it takes on those who wield it. He also realizes that Ciri's connection to magic is not a burden that can be easily shrugged off. The girl he once knew is gone, and in her place stands a powerful, unpredictable force whose destiny is far greater than his own. In this new phase of the story, Geralt finds himself confronting not just the physical monsters of the world, but the moral monsters that lurk within. Throughout his journey, he has maintained a sense of detachment, refusing to get too involved in the affairs of kings, queens, and the various factions that vie for power. But with Ciri's disappearance and the escalating stakes, Geralt finds that detachment is no longer an option. The choices he makes, the alliances he forms, and the actions he takes will have consequences that reverberate throughout the entire world. There is no going back and no place for neutrality. The narrative weaves in several layers of complexity, showing the blurred lines between good and evil, right and wrong. As Geralt moves through the ever-changing political landscape, he meets characters whose motivations are as complex as his own. He is forced to make difficult decisions that often involve choosing between the lesser of two evils. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against him, Geralt remains resolute in his mission to find Ciri. His sense of purpose, his unwavering commitment to his family, becomes a guiding force in a world that seems determined to tear everything apart. Meanwhile, Ciri's journey also brings her into contact with strange and mystical beings, figures from folklore and myth who seem to exist on the edges of reality. Some offer her help, while others seek to manipulate her for their own ends. These encounters are not mere distractions. They are essential moments of growth for Ciri, moments in which she must come to terms with the true nature of her powers and the role she must play in the world's destiny. Throughout this part of the story, there is a growing sense of inevitability, a feeling that the characters' fates are slowly but surely being shaped by forces beyond their control. Ciri's powers, Geralt's journey, and the political machinations of the world all converge toward a single point, the moment when the future of the continent will be decided. The stakes are higher than ever, and the only certainty is that the path ahead will be fraught with danger, loss, and sacrifice. As the search for Ciri intensifies, Geralt's resolve is tested not only by the physical perils surrounding him, but by the emotional burdens he carries. His journey leads him to the very heart of the continent's most dangerous political machinations. The forces conspiring to control Ciri are ever growing, and Geralt finds himself entangled in the complex web of warfare, treachery, and the inevitable chaos of the world around him. He is no longer just a witcher. He is becoming a symbol of defiance in a time when everything seems to be falling apart. The narrative shifts between the perspectives of Geralt, Ciri, and other pivotal characters. Ciri's journey is one of self-discovery, but also of survival in a world that views her as a weapon to be controlled. Her status as the child of elder blood, marked by a prophecy that speaks of the end of the world, means that everyone with an interest in power is watching her. Her every step is shadowed by both allies and enemies, each with their own agenda for her extraordinary abilities. Ciri's growing understanding of her own magic and the consequences of her actions is a central theme of this part of the story. She has always been a child of great potential, but with that potential comes a tremendous weight, a weight that grows heavier with every decision she makes. As she tries to outrun those who wish to harness her powers, Ciri begins to question whether she is truly in control of her own fate. Her every move is calculated by those around her, and yet, despite their manipulations, she is learning to use her powers in ways she never imagined. She becomes more than just a pawn in the game of kingdoms. She begins to see herself as a force in her own right, capable of challenging the very forces that seek to define her. The tension between Ciri's autonomy and her role in the prophecy is one of the defining struggles of her journey. She is not simply a weapon to be wielded by others. She knows that, for better or worse, her destiny is inextricably linked to the future of the world. But does that mean she must accept the roles that others have carved out for her? Or can she forge her own path, one where she is no longer just a figurehead for the desires of others? Meanwhile, Geralt's journey is equally fraught with peril. His search for Ciri is not just a physical quest, it is a mental and emotional one. Every moment he spends away from her is a test of his patience and his conviction. The world around him is growing darker, as more and more factions vie for power and influence. The war between Nilfgaard and the northern kingdoms rages on, but Geralt is increasingly concerned with the battle for Ciri's future. He is torn between his desire to find her and his recognition that he cannot protect her from the greater forces at play in the world. His protector instincts clash with the growing realization that Ciri may have to face these dangers on her own, without his help. This duality, the desire to shield her and the understanding that he must let her grow, is a profound source of internal conflict for Geralt. As Geralt travels through war-torn lands, he encounters a series of characters who shape his understanding of the world and his place in it. Some are allies, others enemies, and some are simply indifferent to the plight of those around them. Each encounter serves as a reminder that the world is never black and white. The choices Geralt makes, whether to intervene in the struggles of others or to remain neutral, reflect the deep moral ambiguity that defines much of the story. He realizes that the lines between good and evil are not always clear, and that sometimes there are no easy choices. One of the central figures in Geralt's journey is Yennefer. Though their relationship has always been tumultuous, it is clear that Geralt and Yennefer share a bond that goes beyond mere affection. Yennefer's own journey is one of transformation, as she grapples with her identity and her role in the world. Her magic, her beauty, and her intelligence have always set her apart from others. But now, as she is drawn deeper into the events surrounding Ciri, she begins to question her own desires and motivations. Like Geralt, she is torn between her own ambitions and the need to protect Ciri, who, in many ways, represents the future they have both fought for. The relationship between Geralt and Yennefer is complex, one marked by love, betrayal, and reconciliation. Their bond is tested as the political landscape continues to shift and as the stakes grow higher. Yennefer is not merely a secondary character. She is an integral part of the story, one whose personal growth mirrors that of Geralt's and Ciri's. The deep connection between the three of them, the Witcher, the Sorceress, and the child of elder blood, forms the emotional heart of the book, and their fates are bound together in ways that none of them fully understand. As Geralt's search for Ciri leads him deeper into the heart of the conflict, he is forced to confront some hard truths about the world and himself. The reality is that there is no easy solution, no simple way to bring about the peace he longs for. There is no perfect ending where all the wrongs are righted and the world is made whole again. Instead, the story is one of loss, sacrifice, and the acceptance that sometimes the future cannot be shaped by human hands alone. Geralt's journey is one of realization that even a Witcher, no matter how skilled or determined, is not immune to the forces of destiny. Ciri's destiny is, of course, a major part of this. As Geralt continues his search for her, he begins to see that the prophecy surrounding her is not just a product of magic or fate. It is also a reflection of the choices she will make, the people she will become, and the ways in which she will change the world around her. There is no escaping destiny, but that does not mean it cannot be shaped by the individual. The world around Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer continues to spiral into chaos. The kingdoms of the north, already fractured by years of war, are now facing the full force of Nilfgaard's imperial ambitions. The battle for control of the continent is reaching its zenith, and everyone, heroes and villains alike, must confront the reality that there is no turning back from the violence and upheaval that awaits. But even as the fires of war consume the land, Geralt holds onto one unshakable belief: he will do whatever it takes to protect Ciri. His love for her, his desire to see her safe, is the one constant in a world where everything else is in flux. As the stakes rise, Geralt's journey becomes increasingly difficult. The world around him, already on the brink of collapse, now seems to be plunging into chaos. The political unrest, the wars between the northern kingdoms and Nilfgaard, and the endless scheming of those who seek to control Ciri all collide in an intricate dance of power, manipulation, and survival. But Geralt remains resolute in his mission, even as the weight of the world presses down on him. Through this turmoil, Geralt's emotional journey grows more complex. While his loyalty to Ciri is unwavering, the path ahead is uncertain. His love for Yennefer also lingers, ever present but fraught with challenges. The tangled web of relationships between Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri, once full of passion and shared goals, is now marked by doubt and confusion. Yet, it is within these complicated dynamics that Geralt begins to find the true meaning of his journey. It is not just about searching for Ciri or protecting her from the many threats that encircle her. It is about understanding what it truly means to love, to sacrifice, and to carry the burden of responsibility in a world where every choice has consequences. Throughout his journey, Geralt is forced to confront not only external enemies, but also his own internal struggles. The Witcher, once a lone wanderer, is now a man tethered to larger forces beyond his control. The fate of the continent is tied to Ciri's future, and though Geralt does not believe in destiny, he cannot escape the fact that the path he follows leads inexorably to the young woman he has vowed to protect. The question that haunts him is whether he can truly save her, or if, in trying to protect her, he is only contributing to the forces that will ultimately destroy her. This tension lies at the heart of Geralt's character arc, where his sense of duty and love often clash with the harsh realities of the world. Meanwhile, Ciri's own journey continues to unfold, and with each passing day, she becomes more and more aware of the power that lies within her. As the child of elder blood, she possesses abilities that could alter the course of history. However, with great power comes an equally great burden. Ciri is not just a symbol of the future. She is also a target for those who wish to control her powers, to use her as a pawn in their grand designs. The weight of this realization is heavy on Ciri's shoulders, and it is only through the trials she faces that she begins to understand what her true role in the world must be. As Ciri continues to run from her pursuers, her path leads her into the realm of elves, where she finds herself entangled in their own bitter struggles. The elven race, once mighty, is now on the verge of extinction, and their attempts to restore their ancient glory are fraught with violence and desperation. The elves' struggles parallel Ciri's own journey, as both seek to preserve their futures in a world that is increasingly hostile to them. Ciri's encounters with the elves, particularly with the mysterious and enigmatic Avalak, shed light on her place in the grand tapestry of the continent's history. She begins to understand that she is not simply a victim of fate, but an active participant in shaping the world's future. Avalak, who plays a pivotal role in Ciri's life, offers both guidance and manipulation. His motives are unclear, and Ciri must decide whether she can trust him or if he is another figure seeking to control her. He is both a mentor and a mystery, presenting Ciri with knowledge that could help her control her powers, but also pushing her further down a path that is not entirely of her own choosing. This duality of being both a mentor and a potential threat adds another layer of complexity to Ciri's journey, forcing her to wrestle with questions of identity, autonomy, and the price of power. The political situation across the continent continues to worsen, and the war between Nilfgaard and the northern kingdoms escalates. Geralt's role in this conflict, as an outsider and a witcher, becomes increasingly tenuous. His once clear mission to find and protect Ciri becomes more entangled with the larger forces at play. The war, a product of decades of political machinations and betrayal, is no longer just a backdrop to his story. It is now a driving force that shapes every decision he makes. The lines between friend and foe blur, and Geralt realizes that in this war, there are no true winners. Everyone is either a pawn or a casualty in a game that is beyond their control. This sense of futility and the realization that the world is in constant flux weigh heavily on Geralt. Throughout his life, he has always believed in a sense of balance, of the need for a witcher to remain neutral and detached from the affairs of men. But the situation with Ciri forces him to confront the reality that neutrality is not always possible, especially when the fate of the world hangs in the balance. As the war rages on, Geralt's own sense of identity is challenged. He is not simply a witcher anymore. He is a protector, a father figure, and in some ways, a symbol of resistance against the forces of destruction. Geralt's evolving role is mirrored by the changes within Ciri herself. The once naive girl who had run from her fate is now growing into a powerful young woman, one who is beginning to understand the extent of her abilities and her responsibilities. Ciri's journey is one of self-realization, where the lines between victim and hero blur, and the decisions she makes will determine not only her future, but also the future of the continent. She faces numerous trials that test her strength, her will, and her humanity. And with each trial, she grows closer to the realization that her true destiny is one she must face on her own. Through it all, Geralt's love for Ciri remains steadfast. Though he knows that his role as her protector is fraught with uncertainty, he continues to pursue her with a single-minded determination. His journey is no longer just about finding her. It is about understanding the deep, unbreakable bond that ties them together. Geralt is a man of action, but in these moments, he finds himself forced to confront the emotional turmoil that comes with caring for someone so deeply. His path, once clear and defined, is now clouded with doubt and regret. Yet, despite the weight of the world pressing down on him, he presses forward, driven by the hope that he can somehow change the course of events and protect the one person who means everything to him. As Geralt and Ciri's destinies become more entwined, their journey reflects the broader themes of the book: the nature of power, the burden of responsibility, and the unbreakable ties of love and family. Each choice they make has far-reaching consequences, and the world around them is irrevocably altered by the actions of those who dare to challenge the status quo. The future of the continent, and of those who inhabit it, rests in their hands, and neither Geralt nor Ciri can ever truly escape the world that seeks to define them. As the chaos of war rages across the continent, Geralt and Ciri's paths continue to diverge and converge in ways that seem almost destined, though Geralt, ever the skeptic, refuses to believe in fate. The battle between Nilfgaard and the Northern Kingdoms escalates, with each move on the chessboard affecting not just the leaders of the realms, but the common folk who are caught in the crossfire. Ciri, once a symbol of innocence, is now a young woman with the weight of a world in turmoil upon her shoulders. The more she learns about the forces vying for control of her, the more her sense of power and responsibility grows, and with it, the complexity of her decisions. Geralt, however, remains steadfast in his determination to protect Ciri, even as the world around him seems intent on tearing them apart. His role as her protector has become more difficult as he faces enemies from all directions, some of which are human, while others are much more dangerous creatures and beings from the dark corners of the world. As Geralt's journey continues, the question of what it means to be a Witcher, and whether neutrality in the face of overwhelming conflict is still possible, looms larger than ever. He finds himself drawn into the conflicts of kingdoms he once would have avoided, his duty to Ciri forcing him to become involved in battles that are not his own. Yet, it is not just the war that occupies Geralt's thoughts. His relationship with Yennefer continues to be a source of deep inner conflict. Despite their passionate history and their shared love, the tensions between them remain unresolved. Yennefer's own struggle with her past and her role in the world is mirrored by Geralt's, and their inability to fully reconcile with each other leads to a painful but inevitable separation. Geralt's love for Yennefer remains unwavering, yet it is clear that both of them are too damaged by their individual histories to find peace with one another. This painful reality forces Geralt to reflect on what he wants out of his own future, and whether he is capable of having any sense of happiness in a world that constantly demands sacrifice and suffering. Yennefer, in her own way, is just as determined as Geralt, though her path takes her to different ends. She continues to wrestle with her identity as a sorceress and the complications that come with her role. Her magical powers are a blessing, but they also come with a deep sense of isolation and the knowledge that there is no true home for someone like her. She is drawn to Ciri, both because of her love for Geralt and because she recognizes the young woman's power and potential. But Yennefer also feels a deep responsibility for Ciri's future, even if it means making choices that are not always in the best interest of the girl she cares for. As Ciri grows more independent, her journey takes her to unexpected places. She learns more about her lineage, and the secrets of her bloodline become ever more relevant as her powers become more apparent. The reality of being the child of elder blood, a unique and powerful being with the ability to shape the future of the continent, weighs heavily on her. Though she initially tried to escape her destiny, Ciri begins to realize that she cannot run from who she is. In her search for meaning and purpose, she seeks out allies who can guide her, even if those allies are not always trustworthy. One such figure is Avalak, an elven sage who presents himself as a mentor, though his true motives are not entirely clear. Avalak's role in Ciri's life becomes increasingly significant, but also more ambiguous. His knowledge of the elder blood and the ancient powers that flow through Ciri makes him a key figure in her quest to understand her own identity. But there is always something unsettling about him, and Ciri's mistrust grows as she learns more about the political games being played around her. While Avalak offers wisdom, he also reveals the extent to which Ciri is being manipulated by forces beyond her control. He plays a dangerous game, one where the stakes are not just Ciri's life, but the fate of the entire world. Ciri's internal struggle with her power intensifies as she learns to harness her abilities. At times, she feels as though she is becoming something other than human, as if the very nature of her existence is transforming her into something alien. She is constantly confronted by the overwhelming reality of her powers, which threaten to engulf her even as she learns to control them. The fear that she might lose herself in the process of gaining power is a recurring theme in her journey. This fear is compounded by her growing understanding of the forces that seek to use her for their own ends, whether for political dominance, vengeance, or manipulation. Meanwhile, Geralt, still navigating the storm of war and magic, remains determined to protect Ciri, even though he knows that he cannot shield her from every danger. His bond with her, forged through years of shared experiences, has become something deeper, something more familial. Despite the constant obstacles and betrayals that they face, Geralt's love for Ciri remains a constant in a world that is anything but stable. As he faces the political upheaval that surrounds him, Geralt also realizes that his role as Ciri's protector is not simply about defending her from physical harm, but also about preparing her for the complex world that awaits her. The political intrigue that permeates every corner of the continent only intensifies as the struggle between Nilfgaard and the northern kingdoms reaches new heights. Geralt's involvement in this conflict becomes more pronounced, despite his desire to remain detached. As the war continues, his journey takes him through the heart of the battles and the shifting alliances that define the continent's ever-changing landscape. He is forced to confront the grim reality that the world is not a place where one can simply remain on the sidelines. In the end, even the Witcher must make choices that have profound consequences for both himself and those he loves. As Geralt's path becomes further entwined with Ciri's, Both are forced to reckon with the fact that the world they inhabit is one of constant turmoil, where the forces of destiny, power, and love are in a delicate and fragile balance. They can no longer escape the roles that have been thrust upon them, and as the world continues to burn around them, they must confront the ultimate question: what will be the price of their choices? The journey toward understanding their true roles in this war-torn world forces Geralt and Ciri to reckon with their pasts, their futures, and the legacy they will leave behind. Each step forward brings them closer to an uncertain future, where the cost of survival may be more than they are willing to pay. The world is closing in on them, and their only hope lies in finding a way to hold onto the humanity they still have left amidst the madness that surrounds them. The journey of Geralt and Ciri continues to unfold in unpredictable and dangerous ways, as both characters are pulled deeper into the web of politics, war, and magic that shapes their world. Geralt, now more than ever, finds himself facing the harsh reality of his existence, one where neutrality seems increasingly impossible. The Witcher, who once believed that his role was to remain a detached observer, now understands that he is inextricably bound to the fate of the world around him, and to Ciri's fate in particular. As the war between Nilfgaard and the Northern Realms intensifies, the battle lines become more complex, with shifting allegiances and betrayals playing a crucial role in the outcome. The Northern kingdoms, fractured and divided, struggle to maintain their unity in the face of the unstoppable advance of Nilfgaardian forces. Leaders on both sides make desperate moves to secure power, and ordinary people suffer as collateral damage in the political games being played by the powerful. The struggle for control of the continent has taken on a new, more desperate tone, and the consequences of each decision are far-reaching. For Geralt, the question of whether to remain neutral or become involved in the conflicts of the world becomes increasingly irrelevant. His bond with Ciri demands that he take action, even if it means going against his own beliefs about what is right. He has been thrust into a world of alliances and betrayals, where every choice he makes carries the weight of those around him. No longer the aloof and solitary figure he once was, Geralt is now deeply connected to the fates of those who cross his path, particularly Ciri, whose power and significance continue to grow. Ciri's own journey is one of self-discovery, as she grapples with her own identity and the implications of her lineage. The realization that she is the child of elder blood has forced her to confront the powers within her and the legacy she carries. She is no longer just the princess of Sintra, but a key player in the battle for the future of the world. Her abilities, though immense, come with a heavy burden. She understands that her bloodline makes her a target for powerful forces, and she is forced to question the motives of those around her, even those who profess to care for her. Avalak, the elven sage, has become a central figure in Ciri's life, though his true intentions remain unclear. While he offers her guidance and wisdom, his actions seem to be driven by his own agenda. The more Ciri learns about the history of the Elder Blood and the role she is meant to play, the more she realizes that her fate may not be entirely her own to control. Avalak, with his cryptic words and strange behavior, represents the danger of relying on those who promise knowledge without offering transparency. His desire to manipulate Ciri for his own ends becomes more apparent, and she begins to question whether she can trust him. despite the undeniable power he wields. This internal conflict mirrors Ciri's larger struggle with her identity and destiny. Her sense of self is increasingly tied to the power she holds, yet she is constantly torn between the desire to wield that power and the fear of what it might mean for the world. She longs for agency, for the ability to make her own choices, yet her every move seems to be dictated by forces beyond her control. Her growing understanding of her powers makes her both stronger and more vulnerable, and the complexity of her position weighs heavily on her. Meanwhile, Geralt's own journey is marked by the emotional and psychological toll of the choices he has made. His relationship with Yennefer, a love that has defined much of his life, remains fraught with tension and longing. Despite their many separations and the pain they have caused one another, Geralt cannot escape his deep feelings for her. Yennefer, too, grapples with her own demons, seeking redemption and understanding in a world that offers little of either. Their bond, though enduring, has been scarred by the years, and the pain of their relationship is a constant presence in both their lives. They are two individuals who love one another deeply, but are unable to overcome the forces that pull them apart. The emotional distance between them only grows as they are forced to confront the harsh realities of the world and the roles they must play in it. Geralt's internal struggle becomes more pronounced as he continues to face the consequences of his actions. His role as Ciri's protector is no longer just about keeping her safe from physical harm. It is about preparing her for the world she will inherit. He must guide her through the complexities of power, responsibility, and survival, even as he himself is uncertain of how to navigate the same challenges. His desire to protect Ciri, to shield her from the worst of the world's violence and manipulation, is tempered by the understanding that he cannot prevent her from becoming part of that world. In many ways, Geralt sees Ciri as his last hope for redemption, the only person who might be able to break the cycle of violence and suffering that has defined his life. The political landscape of the continent continues to shift, and the consequences of the war reverberate through every kingdom. As Nilfgaard continues its march, the northern realms find themselves on the brink of collapse. The fragile alliances that once held the kingdoms together begin to fracture, and the peoples of the continent are left to pick up the pieces of a broken world. In the midst of this turmoil, Geralt and Ciri are forced to make difficult choices that will shape their futures and the fate of those around them. Ciri's desire for independence and self-determination grows stronger, and she begins to take more control over her own destiny. She seeks to understand the full extent of her powers, but she also comes to terms with the fact that she is not entirely in control of them. The realization that her bloodline has made her a pawn in a much larger game forces Ciri to confront the darker aspects of her identity. She is both a tool of power and a symbol of hope, a paradox that makes it difficult for her to know who she truly is. As Geralt and Ciri continue to navigate the treacherous waters of war, magic, and destiny, they are forced to confront the reality that their fates are intertwined in ways they cannot escape. The world is on the brink of collapse, and the choices they make will determine not only their own futures, but the future of the entire continent. Their journey, marked by loss, betrayal, and sacrifice, becomes an exploration of what it means to survive in a world that offers no guarantees, where every decision has consequences that echo across time. Geralt and Ciri's story is one of resilience, of trying to find hope and meaning in a world that seems determined to strip them of both. The choices they make will shape the world's future, and their struggle to retain their humanity in the face of overwhelming darkness will resonate long after their journey has ended. As they move forward, they must face the harsh truth that survival often comes at a cost, and that the road to redemption is never easy. The path ahead for Geralt and Ciri is one of profound complexity, filled with choices that grow increasingly difficult to navigate. As Geralt's role as Ciri's protector and mentor deepens, the weight of their intertwined fates becomes impossible to ignore. Ciri, once a vulnerable child, is no longer simply a princess of Sintra. She is a young woman grappling with the intense power flowing through her veins. Her extraordinary abilities make her an even more dangerous pawn in the wars, politics, and magical schemes that are escalating around her. The tension between fate and free will is a core theme as Geralt and Ciri are both confronted with their limited ability to control the course of their lives. They are caught in the midst of events far larger than themselves, and yet their personal choices often seem to hold the power to shape the world's destiny. The land is still reeling from the devastating impact of the Nilfgaardian Empire's conquest, and the northern kingdoms have been reduced to a shell of their former selves. Amidst this devastation, Geralt must confront his own inner demons while trying to provide guidance to Ciri. His own sense of responsibility, coupled with the guilt he feels about his past actions, makes his task of teaching and protecting her increasingly burdensome. For Ciri, the sense of identity is in constant flux. She cannot ignore her heritage, but the more she learns about her lineage and the power that comes with her elder blood, the more she fears it. She understands that she is a tool for those who want to control her. Be it the Nilfgaardian Emperor, the sorcerers who have manipulated her, or even the ancient beings who seek to exploit her gifts. In the face of such overwhelming pressure, Ciri yearns for control over her own destiny. But each new encounter with powerful figures who seem to have their own agendas pulls her further away from that sense of agency. Geralt, in his attempts to guide her, becomes increasingly aware of the impossible situation they both find themselves in. His desire to protect Ciri is rooted in love, but it is also driven by a deep sense of responsibility. He realizes that the world around them will not allow Ciri to remain untouched by its violence and corruption. While Geralt has long prided himself on his neutrality, the time for staying uninvolved is coming to an end. As his bond with Ciri deepens, he understands that his neutrality can no longer shield them from the forces that have already set their sights on them. This internal conflict becomes clearer when Geralt encounters various characters, some allies, others enemies, who remind him that he is increasingly unable to stand aside. The sorceresses, in particular, serve as a reminder of the political and magical forces at play. Yennefer, ever the fierce and proud woman, is still deeply connected to Geralt, but her path has also diverged. The tension between them is palpable. While their love is undeniable, it is also fraught with bitterness and regret. Their relationship is marked by unspoken words, and the distance between them grows as the stakes rise. While Geralt struggles with his own emotions, Yennefer, too, is drawn back into the political machinations of the world. Her involvement with the Lodge of Sorceresses is ever present, and her goals are becoming more entwined with the fate of Ciri. Yennefer's motivations are not entirely transparent. She is a woman of great ambition and conviction, and though she cares for Ciri, she also has her own plans. As both Geralt and Yennefer become more embroiled in the complex power structures of the continent, they must confront the ethical implications of their involvement in a world that seems doomed to perpetual war. Ciri's journey, though marked by moments of self-realization, is no less fraught with challenges. Her relationship with her elder blood becomes a constant source of inner turmoil. This bloodline, both a gift and a curse, binds her to forces beyond her control. She begins to see that the legacy of the elder blood is not one that can be erased, no matter how hard she tries to deny it. Her powers grow, but so does her understanding of how dangerous they can be. The question of whether she can live up to the expectations of those around her, or whether she must forge her own path, is a question that haunts her with increasing intensity. Throughout the story, Ciri's sense of agency becomes increasingly fractured. The revelation that she is the one destined to potentially reshape the world is both an honor and a curse. As the various factions continue to vie for her, each with their own interpretation of what her role in the world's future should be, Ciri realizes that she cannot rely on anyone, not even Geralt or Yennefer, to provide the answers she seeks. Instead, she must find her own way, even if it means confronting the most difficult truths about her own identity and destiny. Geralt's journey also takes a significant turn when he confronts the harsh realities of what it means to be a Witcher. He has long been haunted by the choices he has made, especially those involving the greater good and the lives of innocents caught in the crossfire. But as the events of the war continue to unfold and the violence around him escalates, Geralt's perspective shifts. He can no longer be the isolated figure that he once was. As a protector of Ciri, he must face the truth that his own personal desires must be put aside for the sake of something much greater. The constant tension between personal sacrifice and the pursuit of personal desires runs throughout the narrative. As Geralt's bond with Ciri strengthens, he comes to realize that she, too, is caught in the same struggle. She cannot simply follow the wishes of those who love her or those who claim to understand her fate. Instead, she must discover what she is truly willing to fight for, even if it means going against those she trusts the most. The evolution of Ciri's character is as much about embracing her power as it is about understanding the responsibility that comes with it. The world they inhabit grows ever darker, with fewer places to hide from the encroaching chaos. As the war continues to ravage the continent, the cost of survival becomes ever higher. It is a world where choices are increasingly made not based on ideals, but out of necessity. Geralt and Ciri must learn to navigate this harsh landscape, both for their survival and for the chance to shape the future. The struggle between personal desires, the need for self-preservation, and the greater good becomes one of the central themes of their journey. As Geralt and Ciri continue to face the storms of war, magic, and destiny, they must come to terms with the fact that their fates are no longer their own. The world they once knew is slipping away, replaced by a new order, one where survival comes at a cost. In this new world, there are no simple answers, no easy choices. The only certainty is that, whatever happens, they will face it together. Their bond, forged in blood, hardship, and love, is the only thing that remains constant in a world that is constantly shifting. As Geralt and Ciri venture further into the tumultuous world around them, their bond grows even more complex, tested by both external dangers and internal doubts. Ciri, still struggling with her immense power and the burden of her elder blood, begins to feel the weight of her destiny pressing down on her with increasing force. Despite Geralt's constant presence and protection, Ciri knows that the choices she faces are ultimately hers to make. She begins to understand that no amount of guidance or love can shield her from the reality of her own identity, nor from the role she must play in the inevitable conflicts that are coming to a head. Geralt, ever the reluctant hero, begins to see the limits of his own influence. His journey as a witcher has always been marked by a certain detachment from the world, a distance that he used to protect himself from the pain and guilt that came with his choices. But with Ciri, that detachment is no longer possible. His duty to her, his love for her, forces him to engage with the larger world in ways he never expected. The world of politics, magic, and war that he has long avoided now becomes an inescapable part of his reality. As he becomes more entangled in the web of fate, he must confront the question of whether it is possible to remain true to his own principles while also protecting the one person who means everything to him. The theme of sacrifice runs through the narrative with a sharpness that cannot be ignored. Ciri's fate, intertwined with Geralt's, is a constant reminder of the sacrifices they must make to survive in a world that seems intent on destroying them. Ciri, more than anyone, begins to question whether her destiny is one she can accept or whether she must defy it entirely. The power that courses through her veins is both a blessing and a curse, and as she comes to understand its implications more deeply, she realizes that there is no escaping the legacy of her bloodline. The world sees her as a tool, a weapon, a symbol of power to be controlled. Yet, as the narrative unfolds, Ciri comes to the painful realization that she cannot simply follow the expectations of others. Her true path is one she must carve for herself, no matter the cost. But with this realization comes the undeniable truth that she is not entirely alone. Geralt's presence in her life is a steady anchor, a reminder that even in the most chaotic and dangerous of times, there is someone who will stand by her. Geralt's own struggles with his identity and his sense of duty reflect the inner turmoil Ciri faces. His journey has been one of constant self-examination, of questioning his place in a world that often sees him as nothing more than a monster slayer. Yet, through his bond with Ciri, Geralt begins to see that his purpose may not lie in the cold neutrality he once embraced, but in the love and protection he offers her. This growing emotional connection between Geralt and Ciri becomes a pivotal element of the story. It is a bond that transcends bloodlines, prophecies, and political machinations. Their relationship becomes one of mutual dependence and understanding. Geralt, the gruff, solitary witcher, begins to understand the power of love, not as a weakness, but as a source of strength. Ciri, in turn, learns to trust in herself, even as she comes to grips with the enormity of her powers and the burdens they bring. Through each challenge they face together, their relationship deepens, evolving from that of a protector and the protected to something more complex, more familial, and more profound. In the background of their personal struggles, the the larger world continues to spiral into chaos. The war between the northern kingdoms and Nilfgaard rages on, with no clear victor in sight. The once proud kingdoms of the north are now fractured, their rulers struggling to maintain any semblance of power against the overwhelming might of Nilfgaard. The conflict is not only a war of armies, but also of ideologies, with each side believing that their vision of the world is the one that must prevail. In the midst of this war, Ciri remains a central figure, a symbol of both hope and fear, a key to unlocking the future of the continent. The sorceresses, too, continue to play their part in the unfolding drama. Their ambitions, often cloaked in secrecy and intrigue, further complicate the political landscape. Yennefer, once again, finds herself deeply involved in these political machinations, though her motivations are never entirely clear. She is still fiercely protective of Ciri, but her actions suggest that she has her own goals that may not align perfectly with those of Geralt. The tension between Geralt and Yennefer, fueled by their shared history and complicated feelings for one another, continues to simmer beneath the surface. While their love for Ciri is unquestionable, their relationship with each other remains fraught with unresolved emotions. Meanwhile, the shadowy figures from the past, who have long been manipulating the strings of power, remain ever present. The various factions vying for control of the continent know that Ciri's abilities are the key to their success, and they are willing to do anything to control her. But Ciri, who has spent so much of her life being controlled by others, is slowly learning how to fight back, not just with her powers, but with her mind and her will. As Ciri continues her journey, the concept of fate becomes more and more significant. She has spent so much of her life being told that she has no choice, that her destiny is written in the stars. But as she grows, she begins to see that fate is not a fixed path, but a series of roads that branch out, each leading to a different future. The question is not whether she can escape her destiny, but how she will shape it. Her growing awareness of the choices before her is both empowering and terrifying. For Ciri, the challenge is no longer about accepting or rejecting the destiny thrust upon her, but about determining how she can use her power to forge a new future. One where she is no longer just a pawn, but an active player in the shaping of the world. The narrative continues to explore the nature of power, responsibility, and identity, as Geralt and Ciri grapple with the consequences of their choices. For Geralt, the path is clear. He must protect Ciri at all costs, even if it means sacrificing everything he holds dear. For Ciri, the path is less certain. She knows that her power and her future are tied to forces beyond her control, but she is beginning to understand that she, too, has the ability to change the course of events. In the end, the fate of the continent may rest in the hands of a single woman who has spent her life running from her destiny, only to discover that her true strength lies in embracing it. As the intricate web of fate, politics, and personal ambition tightens around Geralt and Ciri, their lives become increasingly shaped by the decisions they make and the unavoidable paths they are compelled to walk. The story of the Lady of the Lake reaches a critical juncture as the characters' struggles with identity, power, and their place in a fractured world grow more intense. The stakes have never been higher for both Geralt and Ciri, and their evolving relationship is more crucial than ever. This is a time of great uncertainty, where even the most experienced of warriors and sorceresses are left grappling with their next moves. Ciri, once a frightened child thrust into an epic destiny, has now matured into a powerful young woman. Throughout the trials and tribulations of her life, she has come to terms with the fact that she cannot escape her bloodline's destiny. She is the child of elder blood, a lineage filled with power and ancient magic, a fact that has placed her at the center of political intrigue, wars, and even the fate of the world itself. Yet, despite all the pressure, she begins to realize that while her heritage may shape her, it does not fully define her. Her future, though entwined with forces greater than herself, is one that she must ultimately chart herself. As she grapples with her place in the world, Ciri is also confronted with the complexities of relationships, particularly her bond with Geralt. Their connection has always been one of protector and protected, but it has evolved into something deeper, something that transcends mere guardianship. Geralt has become both a father figure and a companion to Ciri, his love for her unconditional, his loyalty unwavering. Yet this relationship, too, is tested by the looming threats that surround them. There are those who wish to control Ciri for their own ends, and Geralt is forced to confront his own limitations in trying to shield her from the outside world. In this moment of heightened danger, Geralt begins to understand that protection alone may not be enough. He must trust Ciri to make her own decisions, to stand on her own 2 feet, even if that means allowing her to face danger without his constant intervention. Ciri, for her part, begins to emerge from Geralt's shadow, her power and agency coming to the forefront. No longer content to be a passive pawn in the grand schemes of others, she takes ownership of her destiny. She is no longer a frightened child, but a woman determined to shape her own future. Her encounters with various factions, from the Nilfgaardian Empire to the sorceresses who have their own agendas, only reinforce her understanding that she is both a key to the future and a tool to be used by others. Ciri's true struggle lies not in the wars around her, but in the way that others attempt to mold her into something she is not. Throughout this journey, Ciri's growing independence creates tension with Geralt. Though he loves her as a daughter, he fears for her safety in a world that has been unkind to both of them. He knows, deep down, that Ciri's path may lead her into even more danger than she has already faced. And as much as he wants to protect her, he understands that he cannot shield her forever. The time for protection is drawing to a close. As Ciri grapples with her power, Geralt must come to terms with his own role in her life, acknowledging that his need to protect her cannot diminish her agency. This shift marks a critical point in their relationship, as Geralt begins to see Ciri not as someone in need of constant protection, but as someone who can stand beside him, equal in strength, resolve, and capability. At the same time, the larger forces at play continue to unfold. The war between Nilfgaard and the northern kingdoms is in full swing, and the political landscape grows increasingly unstable. The rulers of the northern kingdoms, divided and fractured, struggle to maintain any semblance of unity, while Nilfgaard's army continues to advance. It is clear that the fate of the continent is now inextricably linked to the conflict. Ciri's bloodline, and the elder blood that runs through her veins, is seen as the key to tipping the balance of power. Her potential as both a political and magical asset makes her an invaluable pawn for all sides. Yet, despite the machinations of those around her, Ciri continues to seek her own path, and in doing so, becomes a wild card that no one can fully control. Meanwhile, Geralt finds himself drawn deeper into the conflict, not out of personal ambition, but out of necessity. His allegiance to Ciri forces him to engage with the political and military forces that he has long sought to avoid. He can no longer remain detached from the world's struggles. As a Witcher, his role has always been to be neutral, but Ciri's fate is so intertwined with the war that neutrality is no longer an option. In his quest to protect her, Geralt must make difficult choices, and the line between right and wrong becomes increasingly blurred. His understanding of justice, morality, and his own personal code is tested in ways he never anticipated. Geralt, once a man defined by his code of neutrality and detachment, now finds himself in the midst of the very conflicts he tried to avoid. His relationship with Ciri forces him to engage with the world on a deeper level, one that requires him to sacrifice his own principles for her safety and well-being. The internal struggle within Geralt, as well as the external pressures surrounding him, lead to moments of great introspection. He is constantly questioning his choices, wondering if the path he has chosen is the right one for him and for Ciri. The sense of purpose that once defined him begins to unravel, replaced by a sense of doubt and uncertainty. The weight of his decisions becomes heavier with each passing day, and the choices he faces become more complicated. He must choose between remaining true to his own ideals and doing whatever it takes to ensure Ciri's survival. It is a dilemma that brings out the best and worst in him, and ultimately, it forces him to confront his deepest fears, both as a Witcher and as a man who loves a child he cannot entirely protect. In the background, the sorceresses, particularly Yennefer, continue to play their own complicated roles in the unfolding events. Yennefer's relationship with Geralt, always strained and filled with tension, is pushed to its breaking point. Though her loyalty to Ciri is unquestionable, her feelings for Geralt are far more complex. Her power and ambition make her a force to be reckoned with, but her emotional attachments to Geralt and Ciri complicate her goals. Yennefer must confront her own desires and motivations, as well as the sacrifices she is willing to make for those she loves. The dynamic between the three of them, Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer, is ever shifting, with each character forced to reassess their place in the world and in each other's lives. Through it all, the central theme remains that of power. Not just the raw magical power that Ciri possesses, but the power of choice, the power of love, and the power of sacrifice. Each of these characters must decide what they are willing to risk for the sake of those they care about, and how far they are willing to go in the pursuit of their goals. In a world that seems to offer no guarantees, their struggle is one of survival, identity, and the relentless pursuit of a future they can shape, despite the forces that seek to control them. As the threads of fate finally begin to converge, Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer find themselves at the precipice of a future shaped by the choices they have made and the sacrifices they have endured. The Lady of the Lake concludes with a mixture of resolution and open-ended questions, as the characters come to terms with the paths they have chosen and the roles they are meant to play in a world that has been shaped by their existence. Ciri's journey has been one of immense growth, from a frightened child swept into an epic, chaotic world, to a young woman who fully embraces the complexities of her heritage, her power, and her place in the wider scheme of things. Throughout the series, her identity has been inextricably linked to her bloodline, her magic, and the forces that seek to manipulate her for their own ends. But by the end of The Lady of the Lake, Ciri's growth has allowed her to move beyond this role as a pawn in the Game of Thrones, deciding that her destiny must ultimately be hers to decide. Her relationship with Geralt has played a pivotal role in shaping this sense of self, for through him, she has experienced not only protection, but also freedom, the freedom to choose who she wants to be. The connection between Geralt and Ciri, which has always been one of mutual dependence, evolves throughout the book. Initially, Geralt's desire to protect her is paramount, but as Ciri's strength and independence grow, so does their understanding of each other. Geralt, who has long struggled with the burdens of his own destiny and his identity as a witcher, begins to see Ciri not just as someone to be safeguarded, but as an individual with her own agency. The final chapters of the book reflect a shift in their relationship, a moment where Geralt comes to realize that the protection he offers her is no longer just a physical one, but a deeper, more emotional bond. This realization opens up a new chapter in their connection, one where they stand together, not as protector and ward, but as equals who have both faced the world's cruelty and come out the other side changed. For Geralt, the final moments of The Lady of the Lake are filled with both clarity and sorrow. His internal struggles with the notions of duty, loyalty, and sacrifice have been constant throughout the series. But here, in the face of the choices he must make for Ciri and for himself, his journey comes to a personal reckoning. Geralt has spent much of his life resisting involvement in the politics and conflicts that define the world around him. Yet, as the book progresses, it becomes clear that he cannot avoid these forces forever. The weight of his past actions and inactions begins to catch up with him, forcing him to confront the reality of what it means to be a witcher in a world that does not allow for neutrality. The final pages of the novel bring Geralt to a place of acceptance, where he acknowledges that while he cannot escape the consequences of his actions, he must choose a path that will ensure Ciri's safety and her future. It is an act of profound self-sacrifice and love that solidifies Geralt's evolution as a character, not just as a witcher, but as a father figure and protector. Yennefer's journey, too, finds its resolution in this final segment of The Lady of the Lake. Her complex, often tumultuous relationship with Geralt has been one of the defining features of the series, marked by both love and conflict. Yennefer, as a powerful sorceress, has always sought control over her own destiny, fiercely guarding her autonomy while simultaneously wrestling with the emotional pull of her love for Geralt. By the end of the novel, Yennefer is forced to reconcile these desires with the reality of the sacrifices she must make for Ciri and for the world. Her own power, once a source of both pride and fear, is put to the test as she navigates her role in the final moments of the story. Yennefer's development throughout the book is one of inner reflection, as she contemplates what she is willing to give up for the sake of others. In many ways, Yennefer's character arc mirrors the broader theme of the novel, the theme of choice and sacrifice. As much as she has longed for power and control, Yennefer comes to realize that her true strength lies not in her magic, but in her capacity to love and protect those she cares about. As Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer navigate the turbulent waters of their respective fates, the world around them continues to unfold in ways that neither they nor the reader could have predicted. The political landscape, still ravaged by war and the shifting allegiances of powerful factions, remains uncertain. Nilfgaard continues to push forward in its quest for dominance, while the northern kingdoms struggle to maintain their grip on power. The forces of magic, meanwhile, are ever present, with sorceresses and sorcerers continuing to play their own dangerous games of manipulation. But amidst this chaos, the characters remain focused on their personal journeys, understanding that the larger world will move forward regardless of their actions. They may be players in this game, but they are also individuals who must confront the choices that define their very beings. The ending of The Lady of the Lake brings the series to a poignant close. The fates of Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer are sealed, and the questions that have been lingering throughout the saga finally find some measure of resolution. However, this resolution is not without its bittersweetness. The characters, having fought so hard for their futures, must ultimately come to terms with the fact that they are not the sole architects of their destinies. Forces beyond their control continue to shape their lives, and the world they live in remains ever-changing, ever unstable. Yet, in the face of all this uncertainty, there is a sense of peace that emerges, a recognition that despite the chaos, they have done the best they could. They have loved, fought, and sacrificed, and in doing so, they have left their mark on the world. In the final moments, The Lady of the Lake also raises larger questions about the nature of fate, power, and destiny. What does it mean to truly have control over one's life? Can individuals ever truly escape the forces that shape them? Or are they always bound to the tides of history? These are the questions that linger after the book ends, and they offer a fitting reflection on the series as a whole. While the specific paths of Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer may have come to an end, the broader themes of the Witcher saga of love, sacrifice, and the struggle to define one's own fate remain timeless. The legacy of The Lady of the Lake and of the Witcher series as a whole is one of complexity and depth. Through its richly woven narrative, the story has explored the human condition, the fragility of existence, and the enduring power of love and choice. For Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer, their stories are not just about survival or victory, but about finding meaning in a world that constantly tests them. And in the end, they find a sense of peace, not in the absence of conflict, but in the acceptance of the lives they have led and the futures they have shaped. The book may close, but the world of The Witcher continues to echo long after its pages have turned. As the final pages of The Lady of the Lake turn, the story of Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer finds its profound, bittersweet conclusion. The paths that each character has walked are fraught with challenges, choices, and sacrifices. And yet, in the end, there is an undeniable sense of closure, even as the world around them remains in flux. Andrzej Sapkowski's writing remains as intricate and rich as ever, layering personal histories with political turmoil, magic, and fate, creating a tapestry that reflects the complexities of the human condition. The themes that have carried through the entire Witcher series, fate versus free will, the consequences of choices, the nature of power, and the endurance of love come to a head in this final chapter. Geralt, the stoic Witcher who has long struggled with the idea of destiny, finds peace in accepting his role not only as a warrior, but as a father figure to Ciri. His journey is one of emotional growth, from a man bound by duty and a sense of detachment to someone who understands the power of sacrifice and unconditional love. In parallel, Ciri's evolution from a frightened child into a powerful woman ready to shape her own future provides a central pivot for the entire saga. As she steps into her power with a newfound sense of identity and strength, Yennefer, whose relationship with Geralt has been defined by passion and complexity, also comes to realize the true depths of her own desires and sacrifices, ultimately understanding that love and protection, rather than mere control or ambition, are what define her strength. The book also brings the political and social conflicts that have been brewing throughout the series to a turning point, though the world of The Witcher remains as unpredictable and violent as ever. The consequences of war, the shifting alliances of nations, and the pervasive influence of magic ensure that while individual fates may be sealed, the larger forces at play continue to churn, reshaping the world in new ways. Sapkowski's ability to blend personal, intimate moments with grand, sweeping narratives makes this conclusion not only emotionally satisfying, but also philosophically rich. At its core, The Lady of the Lake is a meditation on what it means to be human in a world teeming with monsters, both literal and metaphorical. The series has never shied away from depicting the moral ambiguities of its characters, forcing readers to confront difficult questions about loyalty, love, power, and what it means to choose one's own destiny. The closing moments of the book leave us with the realization that, though the characters may have found some form of peace, the world itself remains ever-changing, always in flux. This perpetual state of transition mirrors the characters' own internal journeys as they too evolve and adapt. In the end, The Lady of the Lake does not provide a simple resolution to all the questions posed throughout the series. Instead, it embraces the complexities of life, acknowledging that no story, no matter how long or how hard fought, ever truly ends. There is always more to be done, more to be understood, and more to be fought for. But for Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer, the journey is as much about the people they become along the way as the world they leave behind. The Witcher saga, and The Lady of the Lake in particular, leaves a lasting legacy in the realm of fantasy literature. Its intricate world building, morally complex characters, and thought-provoking themes have solidified its place as one of the most beloved and significant works in the genre. And while the stories of Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer may have come to an end, the questions they raise and the lessons they impart will continue to resonate long after the final page is turned. For fans and newcomers alike, the saga is a reminder that sometimes the journey itself, no matter how treacherous or uncertain, is the most important part of any story.